a bunch of videos from today's Cowboys practice, and reports are starting to trickle in, including Micah Parsons saying he will be in Oxnard for training camp, even if a new contract isn't done. Quote, I'll be out there. Machota reporting that he did not say if he'll be on the field during practice. He said he and Jerry Jones never discussed his contract during their lengthy talk today. And that is the other thing, social media pictures capturing Micah and Jerry talking there on the sidelines during practices. Bobby Belt from Sean and RJ joins us now here in the GBAG Nation
right now
on your home of the Cowboys. 105.3 The Fan. Yeah, Shotty was great in his pre-deal press conference. Said he's got full attendance. Trayvon Diggs was there as well today. So he said there is full attendance and everybody was happy to be there. As Bobby Belt joins us now here in the GBAG Nation. Good evening, Bob. How you doing?
Howdy, General. How are you?
Doing wonderful. What was your perspective? What's your opinion of Micah not practicing but chatting with Jerv there for a half hour?
I mean, on the actual topic of him not practicing, I kind of expected that. In fact, I was a little surprised when Shotty said he would be he'd be on the field or doing field work. But I think that was just he was using language that was true but not totally true, and so that kind of clouded it a little bit. In terms of him talking to Jerry, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, as soon as Jerry was out there, I figured, all right, they're going to spend time with each other if Mike is going to be off to the side. And so they were, arm over the shoulder, face to face, talking for quite a bit of time. But they have a really good relationship. They've got a really strong connection, and have always, whenever they've been out there practicing at the same time, they almost always check in with each other.
How long do you get the feeling that this holdout of sorts or a hold in could last?
Well, so that's the thing. I was talking about that with some of the reporters today. I don't know how much it's the fact that he didn't specify in his media availability if he would be doing field work if his contract wasn't done when he gets to training camp tells me, all right, he is doing this as a sort of hold-in. But I had wondered also if just the fact that he hadn't been there consistently, if they didn't want him out there doing anything. Because they've done that in the past with some other players, even if it's for not-contact stuff. If they've got guys out there who have not consistently been out there practice, they show up for minicamp, and then they're out there just trying to participate, typically they will slow roll that a little bit. So, but the fact that Micah talked about it as if he could be in Oxnard 6 weeks from now without a new contract, and then he wasn't sure if he'd actually practice or not, that just tells me he's going to hold that position until he gets the contract done in all likelihood.
What stood out to you about the offense, specifically that Dak and George Pickens connection?
Yeah, I mean, this is a little bit more of a, I guess, scaled back team period than we've seen in some recent weeks. It was a lot more detail-oriented and things like that. But from the stuff that we did see in some of the pockets of 11-on-11 we got, I thought George Pickens and Dak had a really strong connection today. They connected on a few different passes. George Pickens absolutely cooked Israel Mukuamu on a route where he faked the slant inside, took a hard step, and then broke outside, and just dropped Mukuamu to his rear. And that was something where I kind of wondered if maybe it was a surface thing because we saw a couple of receivers slip while they were out there. But regardless, he had him completely fooled, got open. Everybody was really excited for it. He and Dak were pumped. And so their connection all day was really, really strong. I thought this was one of Dak's better practices that we've been able to see so far this offseason. He looked a lot more comfortable. He hit Mingo on a deep seam route, looked in connection with everybody. He and CD connected a few times. So overall, I thought this was a good day for Dak. But this is two practices in a row where I felt like, George Pickens really stood out in a big way.
Did Miles Sanders still look like the guy with a little bit more spry legs than Javonte Williams?
Yeah, and that's natural too, just because of their play styles. But I guess I'm been surprised at just how much spring seems to be to Miles Sanders' game. And there was one moment in particular where there was a screen. They're obviously not doing contact play, been whistled dead, and yet they always kind of, run the play out a little bit to the end zone. And Miles Sanders didn't have the ball, but he was sprinting ahead to block air, basically. So, just in terms of the energy and the bounce and, just sort of the running out the ground ball type of mentality. That's been a lot of what we've seen from Miles Sanders. And, originally they were both kind of rotating first-team reps, Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders out there at the OTAs. Today was the first day that I had noticed that Miles Sanders was consistently, when the first team would walk out, he was the first one getting the reps. So they were still rotating, but it was Sanders who would get the reps the very first time, every time the first team offense would go out there.
Hey, Bobby, when you're talking about the linebacker play, I assume it's Sanborn and Murray being the two guys?
Mm-hmm. Sanborn and Murray were the guys out there.
Yeah, so where was Leofau and all this stuff like that? Was he involved in anything that they were doing, or who was subbing in on those things?
No, so they actually didn't do. They had the first team and the second team completely separated out. Typically, you'll see some rotation. So the only time we've seen any rotation recently has been at corner. So when Bland has been out there and they've been base package, they will put Bland on the outside, and then they will rotate Andrew Booth, and they'll rotate Kaiir Elam. Kaiir Elam was practicing today. Andrew Booth was not. So that kind of changed the dynamic of how they were doing things on defense, where it was Elam and Bland doing all the first-team reps, and when they go nickel, he would kick inside. McQuama would go to the outside where Bland had been. So there wasn't any rotation on defense. Their defense today was their first-team defense. They weren't subbing anybody out except to do nickel stuff. So, but I think that, Leofau had been – I didn't even notice Leofau at any point today. I didn't see him get in any second-team reps. It was actually a light day. We're missing a number of guys in practice. Carson is still working back at corner. Andrew Booth didn't practice. Shamar James didn't practice. But, the first-team defense was pretty much locked in. The only thing that I saw in terms of people subbing out or anything a little odd was on the offense. And that was Jake Ferguson was not getting the reps at first-team tight end for some reason. I don't know why. He was out there practicing. He would get reps in with the second-team offense. He did first-team reps in the 7-on-7, but Brevin Spanford was out there getting the first reps at tight end. Then it was Luke Schoonmaker with the first team, and then when they would go two tight end packages, it was Spanford and Schoonmaker. So I don't know if that's an emphasis on getting young guys work, limiting whatever's going on with first team, but the fact that Ferguson wasn't there for second team and not doing anything with the first team, I just thought was a little odd.
That is interesting. Bobby Belt here with you in the GBAG Nation.
Anything from Joe Milton today, Bob?
Joe Milton had a really nice deep crosser that he threw. It was like his second throw of practice. And that's the thing. We were out there, I was talking to Nick Eatman, and we were just all talking about, that's going to be the training camp star. So when we go to training camp, there are going to be so many viral videos of him throwing the ball or doing ridiculous things at practice. When they do that drill where they set up the net in the far end and the quarterbacks are 40 yards out or just trying to throw it in, Joe Milton's going to crush that. And you're going to see, I can already hear it now. I was telling Nick this. You're going to hear so much of why isn't Joe Milton starting? We should have Joe Milton start, because you're going to see it. And it's going to look super impressive. He's still coming along in the processing. To the point that, I wouldn't be surprised if they had to go out there and play football today and Dax were to get hurt for some reason, I think Will Greer's coming in. I don't know that it's Joe Milton. And so I think that they're just at a point right now where they like the tools. They're trying to get him comfortable. They're trying to bring him along because the processing is still something that, he speeds up. He speeds through that stuff really quickly, and he looks a little frazzled by it. So he's working on it, a work in progress. But, yeah, physically, the way he throws the football is really impressive.
What did you think overall about the differences? You've obviously been to the McCarthy practices. What is it that Shoddy did, if anything, that stood out to you that might be different with the way he's handling these mini camps?
Well, it sounds like there's a good shot we're going to get a third day of minicamp. That's different because Mike McCarthy would always cut it after two practices and give the guys a day off, so that's different. I was talking with Tag Harper, the Cowboys PR guy, earlier today, and I was noticing that we always used to see Jason Garrett go through the stretch line, and he would say hi to every player, right? And Dan Quinn used to do that a little bit. What I'd never seen before until OTAs and minicamp this year, you have every single coach on staff goes through the stretch lines and says hello to every single player, all of them. So Clayton Adams is going up, talking up and down to all the defensive players. You've got Connor Riley doing it, Junior Adams. Literally every coach that's on staff is going up and down the stretch lines talking to the players, every single one, offense and defense. And so they're clearly trying to build this tight culture unit. I think it's a much more competitive atmosphere than the one that Mike McCarthy had. You're seeing a lot of juice, and you're hearing a lot of chirping from the coaches, the players, and so I think it's just competitiveness and that real attempt to build the camaraderie and the family feeling is clearly something that's on display.
The great Bobby Belt with us here on The Fan. How, speaking of like the differences, Schottenheimer, McCarthy, how confident are you that it's going to be clear and obvious just that this offense looks different with the way they approach things?
Yeah, I think it's in terms of particulars, like, route concepts or specific packages or anything else like that. We're not going to see a whole lot of that right now. And even if we saw a whole lot of it right now, we wouldn't necessarily be allowed to talk about it if it was done at a certain time in practice. But I think the sense you get from hearing Schottenheimer talk about where he was different, hearing the press conference where Jerry and Steven made sure to outline that, hey, there are some different thoughts here than what Mike McCarthy had. I think given what we saw at the end of 2023 with the way the players had kind of pushed back against the West Coast system that was being put into place and how Schottenheimer had kind of advocated for that. And then just in general, some of the personnel that you see them running out there with and some of the ways that you see them lining up, I think even to the naked eye, to a just casual football fan who doesn't necessarily know all the X's and O's, I think you're going to stand up there, watch the game on Sundays and go, this looks different. You may not be able to put it in words, but I think it's going to be that clear to people that this is a different offense that they're running. To me, I think it'll be as radical in terms of just this isn't the same thing I've seen before or that I've seen recently. I think it's going to be as radical as Linehan to Kellen Moore. Not that those two are, not in terms of the way the concepts are executed or in a comparison of Linehan is more like McCarthy and Kellen is more like Brian Schottenheimer, but more just in the sense of how everything had looked different the first 3 weeks of the 2019 season after everything Linehan did. I think it'll be pretty clear to everyone that, yeah, they're doing different things.
What do you think Schotty meant? He was asked about, what the offense is going to look like, and he said the one word wins. Does that mean he's, he is preparing us that it could look ugly?
Where he said, which part, when he had said during his presser today, when he had said the single word reply wins?
Yeah, there are plenty of areas. Yeah,
that was in reply specifically when he had just said wins. That was in reply to, he had been asked what stat or metric he would use to grade Dak Prescott's success.
Yes,
this season, and he said wins. Which I get. I think Schotty understands it goes deeper than that. But I think what he was just trying to get at was the idea that all we care about is securing victories. If we're securing victories, Dak's probably doing his job. Doesn't mean it's all on him. It's not if they were to lose everything, that Schottenheimer would say that clearly is nothing but Dak. If they won everything, that could be it's nothing but Dak. He's very clearly, the first thing he mentioned today when asked about what's the most important thing, he said turnover battle. So taking the ball away, not giving it away. So that's something that's very important to him.
Less risky, ugly, like the Eagles did. They went from throwing 400 yards and whatever, and now we're barely throwing it for 200 yards, and they just couldn't be stopped.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I don't know that we're going to look at this and say this is like a heavy run first team or this is a heavy pass first team. I think it's going to be pretty tailored based on who they're going up against and what they need to do on that given day. I think the George Pickens aspect of this is big for them in terms of how they want to structure their offense and what they want to do. But yeah, I think that, there was a clear intent when you brought Clayton Adams in here in terms of what you wanted to do with your run game and how you wanted to, change some things there and evolve there. And so that's clearly a focus where they think they need to get better. They drafted a running back. They acquired two veterans. They actually drafted two running backs. They acquired two veterans. They gave their first pick to a guy who is a really powerful interior guard who can help in the run game. So I think it's clear they want to be better in the run game. Does that mean they run first? Not necessarily. Some weeks I'm sure they will be. But I think it's going to be pretty tailored to whatever they've got looking at them from across the field.
Man, it's another practice where everybody on the beat, there's a Kaiir Elam PBU. What have you thought about watching Kaiir Elam in these practices so far? Is he going to end up being a surprise and be more impactful than maybe we thought initially after the trade?
So I think he's looked solid. It's these kind of practices. I want to see him with pads, basically. I think that pads is going to be the biggest thing, where he could have had the most dominant practices out here at OTAs and minicamp, and that would have been great, and we would have been talking about it, and I would have talked about being really encouraged by it. I wouldn't have felt comfortable till the pads come on. He's just somebody who, throughout his career, has had these sort of, performances in the spring and the summer, and then when the pads come on, he's kind of disappeared in Buffalo when you hear people talk about it. And so he's a really, really hard worker. I think that whatever he can get out of his talent, he's going to. I think the question for him is just, does he have the instincts to consistently play out there? The pass breakups, yeah, he's made some plays a couple different times. Today's was a little, it's kind of a technicality because there was a free play there. They had jumped off sides, and so Dak was just kind of throwing it. But, yeah, he's been impressive, from a standpoint of just, he's not out here getting cooked. Like, he doesn't have the Mukwamu player. He hasn't had an instance like Booth did in one of these where, he just got beat deep down the field. So he's generally been okay. Pickens got him for a step or two last week. Dak put some air under it. He was able to make a pass breakup. So I think he's been positive. It's just not anything that I'm willing to feel really comfortable about yet.
Got to run, Bob. Thank you so much, and we'll hear you tomorrow with Sean and RJ.
I love you all.